Have you ever found yourself completely hooked by a story about hidden power? You know the ones: shadowy groups pulling the strings, cryptic symbols hidden in plain sight, secret handshakes behind closed doors. It's totally captivating, right? Well, welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to dive straight into exactly that: why humans are fascinated by secret societies. But look, today we aren't going to get trapped by the myths or go stumbling down the usual rabbit holes of internet rumors. Nope. Instead, we're going to look under the hood. We're going to explore the absolutely fascinating mental machinery behind our obsession with hidden power.
All right, to kick things off, I want you to picture this. You're sitting at a cafe and you see a sealed envelope being passed incredibly quietly across the table next to you. Just hold that image in your mind. Before anyone even opens it, before a single fact is actually known, that little paper envelope already holds an immense amount of power over you. Why? Because it automatically pulls our attention. It practically begs us to guess what's inside, creating this compelling narrative in our heads way faster than any actual facts ever could.
So that brings us to a really core question here. What actually happens in our brains when facts are missing? The truth is, the human mind doesn't just react passively to information. It reacts incredibly powerfully to hidden information. When something is concealed, our attention instantly sharpens. We literally focus way more on what is hidden than what's just ordinary and out in the open. And when those facts are missing, our imagination immediately steps in to fill the gaps. We almost automatically start assuming that if something is hidden, it simply must matter.
Okay, let's dive into the first psychological gear driving this whole obsession, which is pattern seeking. Human beings are basically hardwired to notice repetition and connection. Think of a child looking up at the sky, right? They see shapes in the clouds. One second it's a giant lion, the next it's a pirate ship. Now, obviously the clouds didn't actually change into a lion, the mind did the shaping. In that exact same way, we naturally connect completely unrelated dots in the real world. A weird symbol here, a specific date there, and boom, our minds start seeing a deliberate, grand design, even when the actual pattern is incredibly weak or literally non-existent.
Next up, think about how we process symbols. A symbol isn't just a picture, it's a massive mental shortcut. Take a wedding ring or a national flag, for example. They compress all this profound meaning, history, and these huge promises into one tiny object. Secret societies use symbols in the exact same way. We tend to treat these simple little icons as dense, heavy containers for hidden knowledge, and doing that creates this super powerful inside versus outside feeling of belonging. You're either in the know or you're left in the dark. And let me tell you, that feeling hooks our attention like nothing else.
Moving on to our third tendency, our desperate need for completeness. Seriously, the human brain absolutely hates open endings. Imagine sitting in a dark house and suddenly hearing a creaking door. If you can't see what caused it, your imagination instantly supplies a presence. Usually a ghost or a burglar, right? And it's not because that's the most logical answer, but because it feels like a complete story. It's crazy, but people will actually prefer a totally wrong explanation that offers a full, stable narrative over a true explanation that feels unfinished, like, maybe the house is just settling. Then we have our extreme sensitivity to secrecy. The mere act of hiding something just magically magnifies how important we think it is. Think about it. A private meeting between two business partners is completely normal, happening a million times a day. But if you describe that exact same meeting as taking place behind closed doors with no public record, suddenly it feels super suspicious and kind of sinister. Literally nothing about the action itself changed. Only the mental frame changed. That secrecy inflates the significance of the action, leaving this wide open space for our minds to fill with wild possibilities. And finally, we can't ignore threat detection. When people feel even a little bit unsafe, completely random events suddenly stop looking random. A rustle in the tall grass might just be the wind. But if you're already on edge, your body prepares for a hidden predator. Fear essentially pushes the mind to assume an agent, a who, is intentionally causing what we see. It turns pure uncertainty into intention. That makes a human villain sitting in a secret society much easier and honestly more emotionally satisfying to believe in than dealing with pure unorganized chaos. So, when you take a step back and look at these 5 tendencies together, pattern seeking, connecting the dots, symbol reading, loading up meaning, our need for a complete story, our sensitivity to secrecy, and our natural threat detection, it's like a giant puzzle clicking perfectly into place. They seamlessly assemble a meaning-making system that plugs directly into our normal, everyday psychology. We aren't talking about some glitch in the matrix here, it's a natural assembly of our real mental habits.
Now you might be wondering, how do these everyday mental habits actually build into deep, rock-solid beliefs about secretive groups? Well, conspiracy beliefs don't usually just pop into existence as fully formed theories. they almost always begin in what we can call the empty space. It starts as this felt mismatch, like something just seems slightly off, or the official explanation feels way too small for a huge painful event, and the facts are incomplete. Because of all those natural tendencies we just talked about, the human mind simply refuses to leave that space blank.
There's this fantastic saying, the theory usually grows in proportion to the gap, and wow does that hit the nail on the head. Conspiracy thinking really begins like staring at a cracked wall. First, you just notice the crack, but then you stare at it and your brain tries to trace where it might spread, wondering if the whole structure is going to come down. A single unexplained detail becomes a doorway. Your mind shifts from just passively observing to actively hunting for clues. Simply put, the less satisfying the public explanation is, the more room alternative, hidden explanations have to grow and feel alive.
But here is a really crucial point we have to acknowledge. These theories wouldn't work if they were 100% pure fantasy. They actually borrow their force from reality. Because, let's be honest, corruption really does exist in the world. Large institutions absolutely do hide their mistakes. Elite networks definitely influence outcomes. And yes, governments do sometimes lie. Conspiracy theories take those genuine, real-world patterns and just stretch them way beyond the evidence. It's almost like a rope made of several strands. Some of those strands are actual, verifiable facts, while others are just rumors. But when they are twisted tightly together, that rope feels undeniably strong to the person holding it.
So, how does a passing thought turn into an unbreakable closed system? It happens through this exact step-by-step loop. It starts with uncertainty, that feeling of, this doesn't add up. That quickly breeds suspicion. Someone is hiding something. Then the mind starts its pattern building. Wait, these random details connect. Next comes the emotional reinforcement, where the new theory perfectly organizes and validates the person's underlying fear. And finally, boom, it becomes a closed loop. At this point, skepticism completely loses its limits. Missing proof? That just becomes proof of a massive cover-up, and any denial from the outside is just seen as part of the conspiracy itself.
But hey, here is the really good news about all of this. Just by understanding this psychological loop we've been breaking down, you are no longer standing blindly inside the fog. You are actually stepping out and watching the fog being made. You're seeing the gears and machinery underneath it all. You can start to recognize that these grand stories survive because they reduce uncertainty, they organize our fears, and they give a sense of hidden order to a chaotic world. They make the believer feel like they are awake while everyone else is just sleepwalking. And that brings us to a massive shift in perspective. Instead of falling for the old trap questions, frantically Googling, is this symbol real or who is in this famous shadowy group, we can stop and ask ourselves something way more powerful. We can ask, which human tendency is making this feel true to me right now? Asking yourself that question is like a superpower. It protects you. It shifts you from being a passenger taken for a wild ride to a precise, critical detector of human behavior.
Which leads us to this ultimate, freeing realization. You do not have to become some blind cynic to navigate the world. You just need to separate the actual evidence from the emotional momentum pushing it forward. Just remember these 3 simple rules. Hidden does not automatically mean important. Symbolic does not automatically mean there is some massive coordinated plot. And suspicious definitely does not automatically mean true. Keeping these in mind allows you to calmly evaluate wild claims without getting swept away by the current.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to really chew on. The next time a hidden story, a secret symbol, or a wild conspiracy theory suddenly grips your attention, take a breath and ask yourself, are you actually reading the evidence, or are you just feeling the machinery? I really hope this explainer has empowered you to look at the world with just a bit more clarity today. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, stay curious.